Okay, so today I'm going to be doing my final books recommendations video. If you are new here, basically what I do here is that I recommend books to you guys based on their genre, and I always have tier levels. So for this video, I'm going to have 3 tier levels for you. We're going to have initiates, intermediates, and advanced. Initiates level is for those who are just starting out with this particular genre. Intermediates is for those who are middle of the way through, they've read some, they'd like to read more, and advanced is for those who are ready for a challenge. Today I'm going to be recommending dystopian books to you. Sad thing is, I've only read a total of 1 dystopian in 2021, which is really sad. I'm looking to change that in 2022, because my new favourite genre of 2020 was dystopians. I'd never heard of the genre dystopians before 2020, but I read a number of them and grew to love them so much that I'm really surprised I've only read 1 this year. But I have a lot of recommendations, so we're going to jump right into the video. Never read a dystopian before? Well, let me explain what a dystopian is. So here's the loose definition that I've come up with personally and the way that I see dystopians. So dystopian, taken from the word dystopia, is the opposite to utopia. Utopia being a land where everything is just equal and beautiful and perfect and lovely. So what is the opposite to that? Chaos and so many issues and darkness reigns. So basically, one commonality that I find with dystopians is that we have an overarching tyrant in this particular world who is ruling with a very tyrannical way. And a lot of the time I find that we have different caste/class systems, and I really enjoyed that as well. So if this sounds like something that's up your alley, then these books may be great books for you to read. Also, I did not know this until this year, but dystopians aren't a standalone genre. Dystopians are actually a minor subgenre to the science fiction genre, which is really interesting because a lot of these books that I'm going to recommend don't read like science fictions to me. But anyway, let's get right into the recommendations. So, never read a dystopian before, or have, but you want something easy to start with? Welcome to the initiates level. Okay, so I've got a couple of series to introduce you to, so this may take a bit of time. Let's begin with the first series. The first series that I want to recommend my initiates is this amazing series that I found out about last year, that I thought, ooh, this sounds okay, I'm going to give this a go. I gave book 1 a go, and then I became obsessed with this series. It is the Selection series by Kiera Cass. So the basic premise of this series is that we are following a girl by the name of America Singer, who is living in a dystopian world where we have a number of different classes. And when I say a number, I literally mean America, I think, is like class 5. They have numbers associated to their class number. So she's one of the lower classes, and each class is defined by the jobs that they can have. So America's class can only get involved in the arts, whether it's visual or performing, but they can't do anything else. So there you go. In this world of Ilya, where the book takes place, we have a prince who needs to get married, and so we basically have a situation kind of like The Bachelor that's set up in the castle. But it's kind of more like The Bachelor meets warring times, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes. This series is so incredibly action-packed. You wouldn't know it by looking at the cover of the beautiful ball gown. You wouldn't normally look at this and go, oh yes, that's an action-packed book, but it really is. There's so much war and drama that actually goes on outside of the selection, which is the Bachelor in this book, the selection portion of the series. So know that going in. I gave the selection 5 stars. I gave book 2, The Elite, 5 stars. I gave the 1, book 3, 5 stars. We then have a time jump and move into book number 4. I didn't appreciate the time jump, so I gave this either 4 or 4.5 stars. And then we have The Crown, which I gave 5 stars to. I bawled my eyes out at the end of this one, because, oh my gosh, it was so emotional. That took way too long to get through, so I'm going to try and get through these a lot more quickly. The second recommendation I have for my initiates is the Arc of a Side series. So I have the first 2 books on me. I unhauled the third one in January of this year. So we have Scythe and Thunderhead Thunderhead and The Toll is book number 3. I gave Scythe 5 stars, Thunderhead 4 stars, and The Toll 2 stars. The basic premise of this series is that we are in a world where death literally has ceased to exist, so these people are brought on board to have the job of killing people, and the only people who are allowed to kill are scythes to ensure that people will still eventually die. We follow 2 children in book 1 who are taken on as apprentices by a scythe, and so we get to learn all about what it takes to be a scythe and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I really loved this. I thought this was really good. I loved this book too, and the way that it ended was fantastic. Book 3 really did let me down, but I do highly recommend this. If you are someone who went into The Book Thief because you wanted to read a book about death, oh my gosh, read this one instead. Because it's literally about scythes. It's so good. Oh my gosh. The final series that I'm recommending for my initiates when it comes to dystopians is a series that you can see has glare on it. The Reckoners series by Brandon Sanderson. This is technically a YA sci-fi series, but it's a YA sci-fi dystopian series. So, star ratings. 5 stars for book 1, Steelheart. Firefight, I think I gave 4 stars. And Calamity, book 3, I gave 5 stars. And Brando Sando has said he's planning on releasing, or he has now released, an audio-only book, book 4, which is A New Era of Reckoners. So, yeah, lots of books to read from. The basic premise of this series is that it opens up with a boy by the name of David who goes with his father to a bank to get a mortgage for a loan. A loan for the mortgage, I'm sorry. A loan for the mortgage. And while they are there, one of the villains of this world, an epic, the villains are called epics, an epic known as Steelheart walks into the bank and everyone gets extremely frightened because Steelheart starts killing people. And one thing that everyone knows about Steelheart is that he is indestructible. No one can kill him. He is completely immune. He can't die. But David's father, unbeknownst to David, has a gun on him and shoots Steelheart. Steelheart does not die, but he is grazed by the bullet wound, which makes people realize he's not as immortal as they first thought. Unfortunately, David's father does die in chapter 1. Then between chapter 1 and chapter 2, we have a massive time jump where David does a ton of research on these epic beings, and he is then taken under the wing of a rogue group of crew of people who want to take out these epics known as the Reckoners, and he becomes very valuable to them with all the information that he's learned. I absolutely loved this series so much. I went into this book because I thought it's Brandon Sanderson, it's a YA, it's a fantasy. No, it's not a fantasy. This is a superhero story, but I loved it so much anyway. Alright, so you've read those ones and you're looking for something else. Here is my intermediates tier. This is for those of you who have read you've read some dystopians already, and you'd like to read something a little more advanced. Well, my intermediates, my first recommendation for you is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Okay, there is a lot that I've said about Suzanne Collins, but book number 1 is amazing. It is simply fantastic. So, we'll get there. I gave book number 1 5 stars. Book number 2 is Catching Fire. I gave that book 4 stars. And book number 3, which is, what's it called? I didn't even remember. Which is a good thing. Mockingjay. Mockingjay. I gave 2 stars, but I think upon reread, if I was forced to reread it, otherwise I wouldn't, I would give it like a 1. Because Suzanne Collins had caught lightning in a bottle with books 1 and 2, and then she took that lightning she caught in a bottle, smashed it on the floor, threw it into the trash, and gave Mr. Francy a phrase that he uses all the time, which is the Suzanne Collins curse. So, anyway, but book number 1 is fantastic. So, in this book, we are following Katniss Everdeen, who lives in a district. There are many districts in this world, and again, this is part of why it's a dystopian. There's a lot of different class systems, and every one that is of age, it's a minimum age like teen child age, they are their names are put into barrels for each district, divided up between boys and girls, and every year one boy and one girl is chosen to represent their district in what's known as the Hunger Games, where they basically trap children into this massive bubble, and only one can survive because the goal is to kill each other. Sounds fantastic, right? I mean, it's a lot better than I'm making it sound, but it actually was really good. The reason why I'm putting this as at an intermediate level is because it is really action-packed. There's a lot going on, and I feel like you need to fully focus with this book because there's so much going on that if you get distracted for even a moment, you can get lost in what's happening, so that's why I've put it here. And the second book that second series, I should say, that I'm going to be recommending for my intermediates is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. This series is very much on par with me as far as star ratings with Hunger Games. So, I will tell you about the book in a minute, but I gave Divergent 5 stars, just like Hunger Games. Just like Hunger Games. I gave Insurgent, book 2, 4 stars, just like Catching Fire. And I gave Allegiant 2 stars, just like I did with Mockingjay. So, I mean, they're different series, but they both kind of just went a bit downhill for me, but I do believe that book 1 in both series, Hunger Games and Divergent, are fantastic. By the way, this is, if you're not American, this is the American edition of Divergent, which I just think looks so much better than the UK edition. But anyway, I love the ball of fire here. Oh, I'm trying to get rid of the glare, but anyway, I don't think that's going to happen because it's so glossy. So the basic premise of Divergent is that the book opens up with us following a girl by the name of Tris Pryor, who lives in a world set in the future where there are different factions. Each faction is known for being a certain way. So she lives in a faction that's all about being selfless, but there are other different factions, like one of the factions is called Erudite, which is for those of sheer and utter intelligence. There's one called Dauntless, which is all about, being brave and defending the area, and there's Amity, which I don't remember what they do. Anyway, there's all different factions, which I love. Again, the whole class system, but in this case, it's different factions doing different things. I loved that. So what I love even more is that the book opens up with Tris, who we are following, who is about to go to a ceremony where she and her brother need to choose which faction they're going to go to. Because when the children come of age, they decide what faction they want to live in for the rest of their lives. They can stay in the faction they were born into, or they can choose to go into another one. It is completely up to them. Before they can do this, however, they are put through a series of tests to help determine which faction might suit them best. It is still ultimately their choice, so if the test says you would do well in Faction C, but you want to be in Faction E, that's totally fine. We're just telling you what we think might be best for you. But danger ensues for Tris Pryor because it turns out she is divergent, that she could be meant for more than one faction. Now, there are a lot of issues that people have with those who are divergent, so there are a lot of people that, may want to kill Tris if they find out. So the tester basically tells her, keep it a secret and go, go, go before anyone else finds out, and I'll try and cover this up for you. And now to my one book that I'm giving out for my advanced readers. This is the one dystopian book that I've read this year, and it is definitely coming up under the advanced tier section for these recommendations because it is a tough book to read for many, many, many reasons. That book that I'm going to recommend you is George Orwell's 1984. This is an adult classic. So where do I begin? First of all, the writing style is really tough to read and it takes a long while to get used to. Secondly, the premise of this book is that it revolves around a world that is dealing with a Big Brother situation. Have you ever seen the game on TV, Big Brother? I mean, I've seen the Australian and the American version and some clips of the English version, but anyway, the UK version. But anyway, the game of Big Brother came about because of this book. They kind of took inspiration. So basically, there are cameras everywhere watching everyone's move. And the first half of this book is very much foundational building, us getting to know what's going on and why there are cameras everywhere and more about the dystopian world. But the writing style is hard to read, which is one of the reasons why it's in the advanced section. The second reason why it's in the advanced section is because of the second half of this book. I do not recommend the second half of this book to anyone who likes light, fluffy reads, because the second half of this book is anything but. I say torture, but I don't mean torture to read. I mean torture is probably the subheading of the second half of the book. It is torture. Not torture to read. There is torture that goes on. And oh my gosh, mental, physical, psychological torture to the umpteenth degree. It is very full on to read, the second half of the book, because of the subject matter. So, writing style, tough to read. Subject matter in the second half, tough to read. Definitely an advanced book, but definitely worth it. I felt like the first half was a slog and a half to get through because of the foundational building, and I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. But trust me, it is worth getting through the first half of the book, because the second half of the book, it takes off and it runs, and oh my gosh, it is incredible. And now for the most dangerous ever version of a game we like to call Up. Okay, now we're going down. These are the books that I recommend if you would like to get into or read more of, or look upon some advanced version of dystopians. But in the meantime, I really enjoyed bringing this series to you. This series has now come to a close, but if there is another series that you would like for me to begin when it comes to recommendations or anything else, let me know that in the comments below as well. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you again soon. Be kind and love one another. And happy reading!